Look, thanks very much, Paul. I've got to say, it's a very excited Managing Director of QMines that's calling in from Perth today. I've actually just been up on site last week with our great team, ground truthing a number of really exciting EM anomalies that we've identified that are near our high-grade Mt Chalmers historic mine. And I've got to say, it's a really exciting time to be a QMines shareholder. We'll get into that in a little more detail shortly. But as you can see from this, the front cover here, we're drilling at the moment. We're a high-grade historic, producer located just out of the regional town of Rockhampton, which you'll see on the next slide. Okay, so we're really lucky where this asset is located. Okay, we're 20 k's, as I say, out of the regional town of Rockhampton. It's an 80,000 person town. It's a large mining contingent within that town, with all the coal mines to the north, and we're only 20 k's from the coast. This is a brilliant asset. It formerly produced at about 2% copper, 3.6 grams gold, and just under 20 grams silver. So a very high grade deposit. And as you can see from this slide, there is a lot of historic infrastructure, both at the mine site and also around the deposit, which will really mean we've got a fantastic low capex advantage that we can, will allow us to really reduce our requirement for capital as we take this through to production. So never underestimate location. This is a fantastic site. Obviously Queensland is one of the dominant states for copper endowment and copper production in Australia. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've got a very large existing resource of about just under 12 million tonnes at 1.22% copper equivalent. We've got a fantastic team here that many of your listeners today will know. We've done it before. Our previous business was called Alt Resources, where we delivered 6 resource updates, 40,000 metres of drilling, a maiden reserve statement, and a full PFS, all within 24 months. So we're unashamedly a younger management team. We like to really move things along, and we get things done. Okay, now looking back at QMines, since we listed in only May of 2021, about 24 months ago, we've already delivered about 15,000 metres of drilling, 4 resource updates, and as you can see, we're really drilling this with the end in mind. Just under 90% of that resource is in the higher confidence measured indicator categories, which is going to really bode well as we start to fast track that asset towards development. But as you'll see from the next slide, we've got exploration upside in spades. Okay, this is a very large regional project. We've got the whole belt, 360 square k's. But really, to understand this opportunity, you need to understand the deposit style, the geology. Okay, this is what we call a VHMS deposit, and VHMS deposits are known for 2 key characteristics. Number one, they cluster. So whereby you typically see multiple deposits within a cluster, and I will say it's not uncommon to see between 5 and 40 individual deposits within these style of systems. So very exciting from our perspective. We've obviously flown a very large EM survey recently over this project, and we've now identified 34 untested EM anomalies. So we're really, obviously being up on site last week, ground truthing a number of these. We're really pumped about where this is going. We've already got obviously a great resource there at Mt Chalmers that we think certainly has development potential. But here we can also provide our shareholders with a significant amount of leverage to that ongoing exploration success. As well as that, we've also digitised about 170,000 soil samples here, okay, from previous explorers. So it's given us a really good, I suppose, roadmap, so to speak, as to how we ground truth a lot of these assets and how we make discoveries. We're now in a position where we're able to overlay soil sampling with EM, with magnetics, with structure, to really, I suppose, hone in on those really exciting areas that we're going to start drilling. Okay, and it says here that drilling is to restart imminently. That is wrong. This is an old presentation. We're drilling as we speak. We're drilling just southwest of the historic Mt Chalmers mine, And just to give you a bit of a sense, Paul, that west lode at Mt Chalmers was, I think it's fair to say, spectacular. To give you a couple of the highlights of some of the historic holes there, happy for you to take a pen and write these down. They're pretty exciting. 26 metres at 7.5 grams gold and almost 3% copper. 10 metres at 14.5 grams gold and 3.7% copper. 8 metres at 11.5 grams gold and 4.8% copper. We're pretty pumped about seeing those first results out of this area. We think there's potential for an extension to this west lode to the south, and those results are starting to go in the labs now. So really exciting time for our shareholders. Next slide, please. Okay, so just talking a bit more about the actual Mt Chalmers historic mine itself and the resource. It's a shallow open pit deposit. Now, don't underestimate, the fact that this is shallow. It's a historic mine site, so we think it's got a very good chance of being approved as a future potential mine. And it's got some grade. The current resource is about 1.22% copper equivalent. But as an open pit, that's very high grade when you consider the fact that, historically or today, the average copper mine around the world is sort of that 0.5 to 0.6%, copper equivalent. We've got some of the best mets in the industry, and I'm prepared to put my name to that. We've got a further update on this in the coming weeks. This deposit is as well as being high grade, as well as being shallow, it's got fantastic mets, and we think that'll bode well for a very robust PFS, which is due out in the second half of this year. And as I said earlier, there's a lot of sunk capital here. So that gives us a very low cost, low capex advantage rather, to really develop this asset, without the dilution that you typically see with these style of deposits. Next slide, please. Look, we think differently, okay? A quick bit of background about me. I ran a resources fund after being a broker in the resources space for a very long time. And over that period, I saw 6,500 management teams, come through the door. And I will say that gave us an opportunity to really not only analyse business plans and strategies, but also deposits, teams, and what really is the secret sauce, to making these businesses successful. So, it's not a secret out there that we had a lot of success with our last business. We generated a lot of value in a very short period of time for our shareholders. We're doing it again, but up in Queensland, there's a few things that we wanted to do right from the outset that we think would set us apart. The first thing is that we are certified carbon neutral today, okay? Not we're planning to do it, not where, we hope to do it sometime in the future, not we've got a strategy to do it. Today, we are certified carbon neutral, and we're one of only 3 ASX-listed resources companies that can hold that badge high. We've got solar systems on site. We're using renewable fuel in our drilling. We're using rainwater for everything from washing machines to drinking. We're using pit water for our drilling. I won't go on, but you can see that we're really, future-facing in terms of how we're progressing this business, okay? The other thing that's really important to note is that we've acquired all the freehold land around this mine and around the deposit, okay? Now, that's really important in terms of, allowing us to fast-track this business plan, okay? In Queensland, we know it can be a bit parochial. We didn't want to, coexist with farmers and whatnot. That's allowed us to get in and drill when we want, how we want, as quick as we want. And it's really been the secret sauce to how the team that we've got has progressed this plan so quickly. We also own our own RC rig, so we don't have to wait for mobilisation. We don't have to, our drilling cost is a fraction of our peers. And that is important because it means that, it really reduces dilution for our shareholders. It really allows us to accelerate that growth profile and really de-risk, the development of this asset. So we do things differently. We've got a capital markets background with strong technical expertise, and things are going extremely well up at Mt Chalmers. Next slide, please. Okay, we've also got a number of growth levers here. Okay, the one that's really exciting our shareholders at the moment is this exploration and discovery. To recap, these VMS deposits are known to cluster. Okay, you typically see between 5 and 40 individual deposits in a cluster. Okay, we've got one in resource around the existing Mt Chalmers mine site. we think there's going to be a lot more of these. Okay, we've got 34. That's right, 34. EM targets around that mine. We're in ground truthing those at the moment, and I've got to say I'm very excited about getting the drill rods turning at some of those new ones shortly. But also, we want to develop this rapidly. Okay, we believe that demand and supply in the copper space will cross in 2025 rather, and we want to be ready, to make the decision to mine at 2025. Okay, and we think that will allow us to really generate some outsized returns for our shareholders. I'm over in Perth today. We've got a number of corporate discussions going on. I won't say any more, but it's fair to say that this region is very well endowed. There are lots of ways that we can grow this business and add value for our shareholders. Next slide, please. All right, one thing that I think is really important, is quite often overlooked, is the architecture of these businesses. Okay, if you look at a lot of small resources businesses, there are, if you look close to their capital structures, there are ones that perform better than others. Okay, and so we've coming from the capital markets, we've thought long and hard about the setup, that right sort of architecture to generate some outsized returns for our shareholders. Okay, it's important to note that all our projects are 100% owned. Okay, we've got no debt in the business. We're about a 20 million market cap business, so we've got a lot of leverage here with a very tight, capital structure. I think the board of management own approximately, 40 or so million shares of about 160 million shares. So we're very well incentivized, very well aligned. We put a lot of our own money into this business. We're fully funded at the moment after completing a heavily oversubscribed placement recently. So we've got this fantastic architecture, that we think has the potential to generate some really outsized returns, for our shareholders. And particularly when you consider that we're drilling at the moment, and some of these anomalies, that we're starting to ground truth, we think it's a very exciting time to be a QMines shareholder. Next slide, please. So that's a really quick, overview of the business. Happy to take questions. I will say that, Queensland copper, tier 1 jurisdiction, open pit deposit, with a large existing resource and a massive amount of exploration upside. We're really excited to be drilling all year long, and hopefully hitting or discovering many of these Mt Chalmers, lookalikes, so to speak.
Andrew, many thanks, and you certainly got my attention with that presentation. Firstly, I do apologise. I was told by my team in the studio I pronounced your surname wrong. I called you Sparkle. I do apologise.
Not a problem. I've been called many worse things in my time, so not a problem.
Look, there's a real sense of confidence from you in that presentation. A lot of good things going on at the moment. The backdrop, gold price is very strong at the moment. Bit of M&A at the big end of town. I'm sure there's eyes on the small end of town, particularly on QMines and what you've got going on. Those results you read out during the presentation, pretty impressive. Those first results, they're in the labs. When will we get some information back from the labs and those samples?
Yeah, look, good question. We're really lucky at the moment that the assay times are really condensed. Last year we were seeing 10 to 12 weeks in Queensland at times. So now we're down to about 3 to 4 weeks. So we've been drilling for pretty much this week. So we expect to have them back quite soon. But we've got a number of other things, and I'd encourage the viewers today to have a close look at the what's next section of our recent announcements. We've got metallurgical test work results coming, as well as those drill results. We've got more ground truthing, more sort of activity on the ground, looking at these new EM anomalies, and we're obviously doing a lot of work on this on the development studies as well. So lots of things to look forward to.
That's great. I think you did give us a time frame. Can you just remind our audience when you expect to complete the planned PFS?
Yeah, we're planning to deliver that in the second half of this year. We've pretty much completed the metallurgical test work, which is one of the largest lead items for that work. We've just engaged Como engineers to work on the plant design and the flow sheets. So that work stream is progressing very well. But the challenge with those sort of works is if we find a couple more of these that, we'll obviously have to go back and start reworking the numbers. But yeah, we are planning to deliver that in the second half of this year.
Okay, that's great. And again, I think it's worth reminding, you touched on this earlier, that you clearly have a low capex advantage. Let's talk about, I think that's quite important what you've got going on. Can you just elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, sure, Paul. Look, I suppose, when I ran the fund, I sort of, really looked closely at capital structures and, as I said, this architecture for success. And exploration businesses do, churn through dollars, and that basically equals dilution. And being the largest shareholder and having put a lot of my own capital, into this business, and obviously invested a lot in a lot of recent placements and in the market. I'm very sensitive, like my fellow shareholders, to dilution. So, I want to be a big shareholder of this. And potentially, we make hopefully a number of discoveries here, and as this transitions towards production. So, with that in mind, we've really worked hard on the cost base of the business. So, even though we're a management team that really progresses things with haste, we like to do things in a very cost-constrained way. And so, buying that drill rig has almost halved our drilling costs, which is obviously one of the biggest, expense items every year for our business. Owning the land has meant that we don't have to fly in, fly out workers. We own a couple of houses on site up there. We don't have accommodation costs, et cetera, et cetera. So we've really worked hard on the cost base within the business so that we can really deliver, we think, and hopefully some outsized returns for our shareholders if we were to make some more discoveries here. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense.
Yeah, very much so. Well, Andrew, we will be following the story with interest, and we'd love to get you back in the second half of the year as the project develops. But once again, many thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate the opportunity.